family. I have been with the organization for almost 10 years now, starting in outside sales, going into restaurant sales for quite some time. And then they developed this position for me, which has completely transitioned over the last 5 years. Um, Not only did I start in just, California colleges recruiting and then going into some program development with our training programs. And then most recently, I evolved into this national recruiting and education role where I'm working with partners across the country. I'm currently on 12 campuses across the country, doing exactly what I'm doing now, providing some advice and some feedback when it comes to professional skills, some business acumen, um, and also a little bit of recruiting, also like how to engage with employers and how to stand out in a virtual setting. So today am going to pretty much talk about like your virtual setting and what that looks like. So um, any questions before I begin? Anyone want to add, their lovely face to the screen? I would love it. Because this is, a personal conversation, right? I'd like to see some backgrounds and what you guys are working with, since this is a virtual etiquette class. So let's talk about setting the stage, right? Look back to, oh, wonderful, hello. Let's look back to uh, a year ago, right? When we had interviews or we engaged with employers, life has changed, right? We used to first go to a career fair, shake hands, hand a resume, we'd get dressed properly, we'd be prepared with questions, we're all ready to go, right? It's kind of like a mini interview. Now, obviously, that's totally transitioned. So now we're in this virtual setting where all people see is this little, however big your screen is, this little inch by inch or 2 inch by 2 inch box that they get to see your face and your background in and kind of what you're going to offer from a professional perspective. So let's talk about setting the stage for an interview or connecting with an employer, right? Lighting. Lighting is so important. As you can see here, my light, and this is kind of like engaging for you guys too, just something to just think about. So your lighting, like, is it super dim in your room? So there's a lot of shadows on your face and it doesn't make you like stand out in your setting. We've got here, let's see, different, right? This is a $10 circular light that I just attached right above my computer. So huge difference, right? I mean, let's see it again. You can't really see me talk. You're like trying to stare at me. It's much like the vibe is different, right? So putting $10 into your space is so helpful. Setting the stage for what they see is important. I'm going to go into a couple more topics, but look here. I've got this $5 piece from Amazon that clings to my computer with all of my notes for whatever presentation I'm doing. So I'm not looking down and losing eye contact, because at this point, eye contact is one of your biggest positives going into the virtual connection when it comes to employer engagements with your professors. So if you're able to have your notes, it literally just connects to your computer, then you can see, okay, here's all my notes. I know what I'm talking about. You can even tilt it. So I'm tilting it. So it's like at a great angle, but no one has any clue. You would have had no idea that I have my agenda right next to me, right? You would if I was going like this, correct? Like looking down. So that's all about engagement, right? Setting your stage. Like, are you coming across professional? Eye contact. Hard, right? Because you want to look down at my face and I want to physically act like I'm talking with you, right? I'm engaging with you, but actually talking to the camera itself is actually going to like change how they see you, right? So if I'm talking to you like this, right, Sandy, you feel like I'm talking straight to you. But when I'm looking at the computer, I'm actually looking at your face right now. So I'm engaging differently, right? And you can feel it. So what I recommend, these are just tips and tricks. You can do what you please. So I've got a little Post-it note right here, and I literally just have it right next to my camera with a smiley face. I know that sounds really silly. No one can see it, but I'm looking at a smiley face, no pun intended, right next to my camera so that I remember to engage with the camera, not just your faces on the screen. Another tip and trick, center your Zoom call or your interview right underneath your camera so that can kind of help versus it being in the corner, and utilizing that structure because that can also help. Um, Camera, microphone, the most beneficial way to start your meeting is to make sure that they can hear you, they can see you, and just confirm that everything is working well. Because if you kind of start talking and they can't hear you, then it just feels kind of awkward. So say, hey, I'm Jenna. I just want to confirm before we begin that you can hear me and you can see me well. Are there any issues? And then you're just like, oh yeah, no, we're good, we're good. So that's something to think about, is just starting it off, just making sure everyone's on the same page. I love this point, background and clutter. I wish I could share a photo with you. So the other day I was on this other call. I won't even say what it was, but there was a full screen of like 20 different students, and typically students will have these classes or these trainings in their rooms, which is fine, but his mattress was like tilted up so you could see the bottom of the mattress with a sheet, and there was, I can't, it just cracks me up, a Hulk costume for like Halloween right hanging on his bed. And I was like, oh, that is so funny. Like, but it was so distracting for me because I wanted to think, okay, why is that Hulk costume out? It's not Halloween. So my brain was so distracted as a recruiter, as an employer, because I was really curious as to what is behind you, right? What is going on? Like, where am I? So that's something to think about. When it comes to like your lighting and your eye contact, that's stuff that you can totally control. You can also control your surroundings. If you were to physically see what else was in my room, the room that I'm in right now, you'd be like, I would have had no idea, right? So I'm going to show you what's actually in my surroundings that I've made a point to hide them from my camera space. So, you ready? All right, so there's my dog, and this is actually my kids' playroom, right? My kids at school during the day, so I work in here. This is my desk. You could see all this, but I've made a point to put everything beneath me so that you can't see it, right? The angle is nice. I mean, I have to tell you, there was this one time, the angle, it was this female and she had a low cut shirt on, and and it was a little distracting. So I was like, wow, thank you for that. But I don't need to see that. So tilt your camera up a smidge. So that's something to think about too, is like your angle so that you can find that power stance, which is something I'm going to talk about here in a minute. So yeah, just look at your background, look at your clutter, look at what you've got going on. I don't know how many people are on here. 11, which is awesome. Thank you so much for coming. But I only see 2 faces. So if any of you want some feedback, some advice as to what your background looks like, I'd be happy to provide it for you, because that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to engage with you guys. And last but not least, be prepared when it comes, oh, hello, yay, another wonderful face. So yeah, so be here, be present. If you can turn on your video, wonderful, because then I can share with you like some tips and tricks, right? I can help you guys be more prepared virtually to land a job or get that internship or whatever it may be. So keep that in mind. Let's talk about body language and attire, right? I can't tell you how many times someone has had to get up, from their meeting, and they're wearing like rubber ducky pajama pants or something. And I'm like, wow, you look wonderful from the top up, but why didn't you come in as that like solid professional that I want to see, like you would in a career fair, right? Or in an actual interview. So that's something to think about, because you never know what's going to happen. Yes, you can turn your video off, but if you're in an interview, you're not going to be able to do that. But if you say, hey, give me one moment, I need to grab something, then it doesn't look awkward. Even in classes, right? I know some of your professors are actually going to be your biggest advocate in connecting with employers. So, like, Denise and I have become really good friends. So, if she finds a candidate that she thinks would be great for my organization and what I hire for, she's going to advocate for you because she knows that you're going to come across as a professional. So, take everything you're learning into your classes, into networking with your professors and all that. Most of us are in a chair, right? I would hope that when you do take meetings, you're in a chair, not sitting on the couch. I mean, if you're in a couch, hopefully it's a cute and comfortable one with a nice backdrop. But I want you to find your power stance, right? What is that power stance? It's so different when you're presenting in person, right? You learn to like walk the room with purpose and with content, and you utilize your hands in a specific way. You're not like all over the place. So you have to find a way to still convey your power and your authentic humanness through a camera, right? So how do we do that? I want you to find your power stance. What I'm saying is like, where are your feet? What makes you feel like you're grounded and you're ready to attack that interview, right? So for me, I have two different positions that are comfortable for me. First things first, I like to put my feet shoulder width apart right below me, because if I cross my legs, I start to do like this stuff, and then it's like, what is she doing? She looks really awkward. So sometimes I will do like the male, ankle over thigh, because it actually helps my posture. But I won't cross my legs because then I start to do this. So kind of think about your posture, what makes you feel powerful. Right now, I'm coming across engaging and available to you, right? Like I am here with you guys right now. But if I was an employer or a public speaker coming at you like this, right? You're like, I don't want to listen to her. Like, she doesn't have any credibility, this isn't fun. So I really want you to come across as that professional. We all know that there's certain circumstances where you have to be in your car, or you have to be in a certain environment during an interview or for a meeting. What I'm going to say now is just try to control that, because there have been times where I've had to interview someone while they're driving and they're not there, right? So I'd want to reschedule because I know that's not exactly who you want to be in that interview. So if you can control your surroundings so that you are in a space where you can feel confident, that will change everything for you. So if you're in that controlled environment, so you don't have kids running around, you have a quiet space where you can think, you have all of your lighting and your notes and everything ready for you, you're going to be more successful in getting that job or that internship, or getting an A on that presentation that you have to do via Zoom. Voice, tone, that ties in with your entire body language and your attire, right? So if I was talking to you like this and I would have like no passion, you're like, who is this girl? Right? Like, she's not exciting. But what if I was talking like this? You're like, holy crap, people. Like, I can barely turn down the volume. So that's something to think about it too, is like, how are you going to use your vocal tones to connect with people? Your influx of tone, right? When it comes to sharing passion, or when I have to get really serious, I'm going to change my eye contact and my hands are going to kind of come into play. And you can kind of feel what I'm doing. And if I'm really excited, you can tell it because my voice is just freaking passionate, right? So I want you to think about making sure that your audience and who you're talking to is what you want to get across, right? So if you're in an interview and this company is extremely corporate, right? Because you can tell, I hope you've done your research on LinkedIn, on social media, on their handshake page, follow the recruiter, check them out, talk to friends who may have worked for them before through your network. You need to know everything about that company before your actual interview, right? So if you're going to interview with a corporate company, I'd make sure that everything around you is kind of like Israel, right? He's got that like super sharp, clean cut backdrop. There's not much, I'm not distracted. I'm like, cool, he's like a worldly guy, like he's not super clean cut. He's got his collar shirt on. I'm like, okay, well, he's serious. It's also very different talking about like a family owned and operated company, right? A little bit more laid back. That's what I recruit for. As you can tell, I'm a little bit more laid back in my presence, right? So you want to make sure that you're setting the stage when it comes to physically setting your little box stage and your body language and attire for the company that you're targeting. So you're gonna have to be that chameleon, right? You're gonna have to wear different hats. There is no one shoe fits all mentality when it comes to finding the right career. You can't be the same person in this ecosystem and in this ecosystem, right? You just can't. So how can you do enough research in the back so they don't know about it so that you come 100% prepared? It's not just your resume. That's just what they're going to like see and they'll be like, okay, great, like I'm intrigued, I want to know more, which is why your resume should provide a little bit of I think I want to call them because that's intriguing. You don't want to give them everything. That's why a resume should just be one page. So I hope that's some great information on that back end. How to engage and be interactive. That's probably one of the most important things, not only for professors, but for recruiters. For those of you four who have put on your video, like it means a lot to me as a recruiter. I am very happy that I have 13 people here today and I'm new to recruiting at FIU. So I am thrilled beyond belief that you actually showed up today. But it is really nice seeing human faces. So when you are in panels like this and you've chosen to gain some more knowledge and get some more experience, be there, be physically there, because I can tell you because I keep on scrolling my little scrolling button and I'm like, okay, if any of these people were to follow up with me via email, I'm going to remember you because you stood out. You took that extra step to show up and be visible, right? So thank you. When you want to engage with employers, there are so many great tools in your toolbox, right? Yes, you have Handshake. I know every one of you has Instagram. If you don't have Instagram, I'd be shocked, but everyone has Instagram. Each one of you should have a LinkedIn. The work that you're going to be doing on the back end is more important than probably anything that you're going to do in your actual meeting because you're going to be more prepared. So if you're ever nervous going into an interview, it's because you didn't do enough work beforehand. So interviews can be a little overwhelming though, right? Because if you have, I was on an interview, I scheduled an interview for one of our regional managers and it was one person and there were three of us on. And I could tell that was overwhelming because there's three people interviewing one person, which you typically don't even do that in person because everyone's schedules are so crazy. But since we're in a virtual world, it's like kill 8 birds with one stone. So how do you manage that, right? It's kind of hard because you want to converse and show your flexibility in conversation and go back and forth, but also you don't want to cut someone off. And you also want to make sure you're finding the right tune to their beat, right? So how do you do that with 3 people? And I think it's setting the expectations early on, right? If you want a job, you also want to show them that you can control your surroundings. So saying, hey, can you hear me? Can you see me properly? Is everything okay? As we go, if there's more than one person in the interview, just let me know how you'd like to run this interview. I'm really flexible. I just want to make sure that you guys can learn as much about me as possible. I know it's challenging in this virtual setting, but I'm really open to, an open conversation, because then they feel like, okay, well, then we can just kind of converse and fall off each other. That means that you're like leading the interview, right? Are you going to lead it and then close that interview? Are you going to say, in this virtual setting, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you thinking that I am a great candidate for your organization. At this time, have I answered all the questions that you'd like to know about my background and what I'm looking to do? Because I am confident that if you were to hire me, that I will create a beautiful career at your organization. I'm going to provide X, Y, and Z depending on your field. And, I know that I'm the best candidate that you're going to talk to. And if I'm not, I'd like to know why. Do you have any professional feedback that I can take if you decide not to hire me? Like, what can I do to be ready for my next interview if it's not with you? I mean, I just got chills because the people who do that want to learn, they're coachable, right? And doing it virtually is a little bit easier than doing it in person, right? I know it is, like, 100%. And I can be, a little bit of a hypocrite sometimes, but I also haven't interviewed in over 10 years. So I guess I should probably interview and see if I have the balls to do it. So I hope that helps when it comes to being interactive. Throwing questions in the chat box, raising your hand depending on what platform you're on, right? As I can see here, I have absolutely no questions in the chat box, which is fine. I know that I'm probably answering a lot of questions for you and giving you some great tips. I see you guys taking notes. That is awesome. But it is something to think about. If you want to engage and get more out of this, I mean, you guys chose to be here. You showed up. We're 25 minutes in. Like, what else can I do to help you, right? And that's you asking me, not me telling you. Because I've been through my agenda, which, is sitting right here next to my computer. I've been through this. So, as I come to a little bit of a close when it comes to some tips and tricks for setting the stage in this virtual setting and coming across professional, what are some things that I can do to help you guys, whether it's in, some resume tips and tricks, connecting and following up via career fairs, or what are some things that I can kind of help you with from an employer standpoint? I'm an employer for a family-owned and operated company in the wine industry. So obviously that's not everyone's cup of tea. Perfectly fine. Don't care. But how can I help you from, my diverse background, right? And this is kind of all I know, right? I don't know finance. I don't know HR. I don't know how to hire at a corporate level. I physically read. I mean, this is my folder for resumes right here. These are all of my active resumes. I physically print them, review them, and I personally email and follow up with the students that I'd like to know more about. Every company is different. Some you have to have trigger words. Some you have to have an objective. Every company is different. So having 2 or 3 different resumes is so important. So at this time, I'm going to kind of open the floor, and I certainly hope that I'll get some comments in the chat box, or just take yourself off mute, and I would be more than happy to answer anything under the sun. At this point, you can tell, don't be nervous, don't be awkward, just ask away, because that's what I'm here to do. So yeah, I'm going to have an awkward moment of silence until someone says something or types something in the chat box.
Hi, no, thank you very much for all these tips. I have never had an interview before, but like all your tips, I think they are really good. I feel more confident now because like soon we will have the career fair at FIU.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is coming up.
Yeah.
And if you guys want some more tips and tricks for the career fair, just let me know.
Yes, I would like to know more about like how to follow up after an interview, and also if I always have this question because like I look at my resume, I went to like some to have some advice, and I got a
Mm-hmm.
template. I think it's very boring. So sometimes yes, sometimes I see other people's resumes and they are more colorful, and I would like to have
Mm-hmm.
my creativity in my resume too. But sometimes I feel like where is the line so I don't cross the
You
crazy
want to
stuff.
let's cross the line, girl. So first, following up at a career fair, always ask for that recruiter's contact information or how to formally apply online and kind of how they hire. Some recruiters will actually give you their work email. Follow up because you're creating a network. Follow them on LinkedIn. Follow every company that you talk to at the career fair. If you can block out that, I think they're like 3 or 4 hours now. If you can block out that entire time to talk to every single company at that career fair that piques just a smidge of interest, you are going to start networking. You're going to feel more confident interviewing because it's only 10 minutes, right? So it's not an uncomfortable like 20 minutes where you may have to fill some space if you're not interested, but also you learn to pitch, you learn to sell yourself a little bit and talk about your background and have them be intrigued within a minute, right? So that's something to think about. Like, how do you introduce yourself? Because the first question any recruiter or employer is going to ask is, tell me about your background and kind of, what you're looking to do. I mean, if that statement is the like, turkey and your BLT, like that's what they want to see. Like if that intrigues them, you're solid. So that's something that you really want to work on is your self branding. And then when it comes to resumes, yesterday we just did a FIU resume rush. I was an employer that supported the students there. That was great because they brought their resume, we shared their screen, and I was able to give some tips and tricks. And then they would go to another employer and get some more tips and tricks. So that's something to think about. If you want some like true employer advice, I'd be happy to support you as well. That's kind of what I'm here to do with Denise. But yeah, from my perspective, resumes that stand out are the ones that leave me a little bit in question, right? Obviously like name, phone, email. I like an objective statement because I think it truly states like what you're looking for. Like if I hire for sales, if in the objective it says blah, 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 looking for a career in HR, I'm like, okay, well, that's not even my field, right? Personalize it, right? Personalize the one resume you submit to that company and put their business name in it. Find those words that are really powerful for your industry, right? So like if you were to put like sales in a bucket because you're interested in sales, right? Competitive, passionate, storyteller. I mean, there's like key words that define a salesperson. You want those somewhere in your resume. You want like results driven. You want, if you have results that are like quote unquote numbers, put those in your resume. I don't need to know if you worked at Applebee's that you bust tables, right? But you can say something along the lines of managed restaurant decor and managed high volume turnover, blah, 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 blah. I mean, that is like way better than I bust tables, I like a little bit of font or color. I remember like that person, that name, and I can physically see their resume. If their name is just a different font than the rest of their resume, or there's a little bit of color to it, I wouldn't go too much color. I typically don't prefer resumes with photos because I feel like that's a whole like diversity and inclusion and gender bias, and I just don't go that way. I want to know you as a human. So I usually I don't prefer photos. Every company is different. Like if you're going into like marketing and whatnot, like you'll put your Instagram tagline because you're like in marketing. So it really like the way that you're going to approach your resume and approach your interview is really focused on the industry that you're going into. So I hope that helps.
Yes, a lot. Thank you so much.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. Tricks to stand out in an interview. Thank you, Melissa, for asking. So I would say there's a few things, and I'm going to talk about it in a virtual setting versus an in-person setting because we are locked and loaded in this virtual world. Is it different in Florida right now? Are we doing a lot of in-person interviews, all that?
I know the restrictions have like lessened a little bit, but I think that everything is still majority like virtual right now.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Sandy. So in this virtual world, tricks to stand out in an interview. Setting that stage, right? I don't want to see flipped over beds. I don't want to see, I literally interviewed a guy who was in Minnesota and he was dressed to the nines. Tie, I should have taken a picture. It was wonderful. Like he was perfect. You want to know what his backdrop was? His closet. All of his clothes hanging behind him, and all the hangers were crooked. And the whole time I wanted to connect with him, but I was so distracted because I'm a color coordinator. So I was like, why are all the colors mixed up? So I was not myself because I was so distracted with his backdrop. So I would say that's the first thing, how to stand out in an interview is just be fully prepared with your stage. Like I set up my whole stage 20 minutes before my call with you guys. So I'd say that. I would also say making sure that you have some really good questions, and be conversational, right? This shouldn't be like a, hey, Sandy, how do you deal with stress? Right? I was like, okay, like that's really boring. But in your introduction, you can kind of touch on, typical questions within an interview, like how do you deal with stress, or how do you manage chaos, or what are some of your biggest weaknesses, right? Like those are pretty go-to questions when it comes to an interview. So how can you touch on that as you're answering other questions? So it is conversational rather than saying like, what are your biggest strengths and weaknesses? Okay, I can answer that for you. So, you know what? Like, I find myself to be over organized and making sure that everything is in its proper place. So when things get out of place and they're not where I want them to be, or someone puts something away where it's not supposed to go, I get a little stressed out inside. Like I have a little bit of anxiety because it's not going my way. So something I've been working on is making sure that I am more flexible, flexible to change, flexible to move and groove with people not doing the things that I want them to do. Like, and then I would give an example. So, at home, my husband has a hamper where dirty clothes go. But for some reason, he thinks it's okay to drop the clothes right in front of it, not inside of it. So I've had to say, okay, you know what? It's fine, but I'm not doing your laundry unless it's in the basket. So I'm actually getting more flexible with it. I'm okay with it because I know I'm not picking it up off the ground. So I'll be able to provide examples to my weaknesses, right? But I'm also highlighting a strength that I am organized, I am type A, I get the job done. You know what I mean? So I think that's a really great way to stand out, is providing examples and kind of telling a story versus like, my biggest weakness is I'm type A. It's like, well, okay. I mean, obviously, like that's a strength and a weakness all at the same time. It's kind of annoying. Sandy, you have a question?
Okay, so hi Jenna. I noticed that you're using your hands a lot while talking. And so what advice would you give someone that's like constantly like touching our hair or our face, and like how to make it like less apparent that we're
Mhm.
nervous or just like don't know what to do with our hands?
Love it. I'm actually doing it right now, so I wasn't going to react and kind of show you. So I am a passionate and driven and kind of wild person, behind the scenes. So I use my hands because I am just engaged, right? If I talk in person, I am walking across the room with like actual intention. As I change my thought or I change my direction, I'm crossing the room and I'm stopping and I'm re-engaging with a new group of people. And then I'll walk to the other side of the room as I transition, and then, I engage in those. That's kind of how I present. So here in this virtual world, I've had such a hard time sitting in one place and not being able to like utilize my body as, I guess, my stressor portal, I guess you could say. So I have found that this actually brings me to center. I know it seems really weird, but like with all of my fingers and their tips touching, it makes me feel like I'm kind of whole in circle. I know it sounds really weird, but it just brings a little bit of peace. So when I catch myself finding like the nerves picking up, or I'm getting a little too crazy or something, or playing with your hair, or like clicking a pen or whatever it may be, this just kind of like, you just put them in your lap, kind of brings me to center. You put those feet down, right? Like your 2 feet shoulder width apart. Try it. Sandy, try it right now. Put your feet shoulder width apart and then do this. How much right between your legs? How much peace do you find right now? Like you feel a little bit more centered, right? So finding a way to cope with your nerves and cope with like all of that, you just have to find what works for you.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Israel, what's up?
Thank you for doing this and coaching us through all of this. My question is, usually you follow up within 24 hours to 72 hours of an interview. After that, about a week or so, I give myself about 10 days. When is it too much or too little to follow up with an interview?
Yeah, I would say it's the balance, right? And also what type of company you're talking to. For me, the more you bug me, the more excited I am to talk to you. So I'm like, yeah, you are going to follow up. That means you're going to sell a bunch of shit, right? Like, yeah, I'm excited. But there's some companies where it's like, that is not how they recruit. That is not appropriate. So I think it's really doing that back research on what type of company you're talking to, right? I would say if someone gives you their email and let's say you met them at the career fair, let's just do like a life trajectory of like a corporate company. You know, you meet them at the career fair, you've had a nice conversation, you asked for their contact information, they gave it to you. I'd say the following morning, send them a really nice email. But in that email, not just saying, I'm following up from our career fair yesterday. I really enjoyed our conversation. Boring, right? Like stand out a little bit, you know, hey, blah, blah, blah. You know, yesterday's career fair was so impactful for me. I can tell you right now that after speaking with you, I'm more excited than ever about your organization, what you hire for, and a possible future at your organization. I can see myself fitting in with your company culture. Attached is my resume for review. I'd like to talk about the next steps in moving forward and getting to know you as well as you getting to know me better, because 10 minutes didn't feel like enough. Here's some availability if you'd like to pick up the phone and talk with me based off of my school schedule. If I don't hear from you within the next week or two, I will be following up, as this is definitely a company that I'd like to talk to or whatever, right? Woo! I read that, I'd be so excited.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I recorded this, so Denise will have it. Okay, Valeria, what's happening?
Hi, Jenna. My
Hi.
question is it a good impression to put like a background picture? Because I don't know if my background right now is like too distracting and I want to make like a good impression during an interview. Would they prefer like just a professional background picture?
You know, I think it depends on who you're talking to and what background and all that. Like, I love Marissa's background because it's just like, it's one of those template ones, and I am like so intrigued as to what's behind that, you know? But it's professional in its own sense. So I'd say if you can do that, go for it, right? If not, I think if I was to give you any type of feedback, the angle of the computer is weird. So like, I'd want to see like full force. Like, I think Israel's computer is a little bit more down. So it's like, I'm like, he's like, I don't even know how to do it. Like, I don't know. Yeah. So you almost want to be just like camera straight on, you know, versus like a weird tilted angle. So if you can fix that, I would fix that. Otherwise, no. I mean, I just want to know like who's in those photos, you know, like you look like you have fun. You know, but you also got some books back there, so you're studious. So I'm still kind of like, you're kind of leaving me in question. Like, I am a little distracted. So just be careful with that, because even if it's just like Sandy's background, I love it because there's a little bit of color, but nothing else, you know? So I keep that in mind. If you can pull that off, I know everyone's situations are so different in this, you know, stay at home pandemic. It's like, we don't all have the luxury of a blank wall, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Of course. I got a question in the question box. I'd like to ask, what are some of the professional gains as well as challenges you've picked up in the wine industry? Also, it is shown to be something that can be useful mainly in a business aspect. I'm trying to figure out if that's question, you know, challenges in like recruiting or challenges just like in the wine industry during COVID. So Emil, if you're still here, please, if you can, hop off mute and maybe elaborate a little bit. It seems like a good question. I just don't know how to answer it to make you happy. Oh, wine industry throughout my career. Beautiful. So I would say some of the challenges that I've faced is, number one, there's so much opportunity in the beverage industry. So you think about, okay, well, you go and sell wine or liquor or beer, or whatever it may be, in a grocery store for your first job. But there are so many other opportunities within the industry for professional development that not many people actually think about, right? There's working for a supplier who actually produces the product. There's distributors who actually distribute the product. There are small brands that self-distribute. There are winemakers, there's production facilities, there's marketing, there's PR, there's HR, there's IT. I mean, like Jackson Family Wines, who I work for, is a full-blown supplier. We own our own distributor. We partner with other distributors across the country. I mean, we've got a lot of opportunity for growth. But when you're, in school, you may think, I've got to go do a cold calling job to get into sales. Like, no, there's outside sales jobs, there's inside sales jobs, there's cold calling, there's managing established relationships. There's so many different ways you can go. And I find that the biggest challenge is finding what you want to do in my industry, right? Like what fits your trajectory, like your goals. Like, do you want to be in sales for the rest of your career? Awesome, right? Well, how can you get some management experience, some distributor experience, so that you can, work your way up the ladder, because that's just how we function. So I think the biggest challenge is letting people like what's out there. And that's been hard because not many people know, they just don't. I'd say most recently, the wine industry is thriving. So that hasn't been a challenge, but it has been now because wine is so popular. People know that it's an emerging market during COVID. So they want to get in the industry. So there's been an influx of people wanting to get into the beverage industry because it's obviously not going. If it's pandemic resistant, someone wants to be in it, right? So I think that's been actually like a challenge. Because now we're finding too much interest, but not people who are specifically passionate about wine. And that's all we make. So it's challenging in a sense where it's like, I just want to find people who love the beverage and wine industry, right? Let's see. I think that's a good answer. I hope that answers what you needed. Oh, perfect. You're welcome, Emil. I have another question. I would say, so Mateo just sent me a direct message, wonderful question. But he was asking like how you can have employers take you seriously if you're kind of in a different background, right? And it may not be like that specific, business management or business and marketing or typical, business route. I'd say that being able to talk and highlight transferable skills is the one thing that's going to get you to that, management or that different side of whatever industry you're going towards. So being able to highlight those transferable skills, which I'm not exactly sure what his skills are and how we could translate them. I'm always happy to help if you want to connect with me offline or via LinkedIn. But like if you are, let's just say like a guitar teacher and you teach 15 different kids under 18, right? Like you can manage a busy schedule, you're able to prioritize, you're good in groups and you work well alone. Like there are things that you can highlight in like your objective or some of your like skills that will actually transfer into that company or that job, right? Or that career path or whatever. So I think it's really kind of digging deep and figuring out what those transferable skills are. So like I've hired quite a few people that are like in psychology. That's their major. But I hire you to run a business. So wouldn't I typically want to hire a business student? Well, yeah, but also I've learned that psychology students are great with people. They know how to connect. They kind of dive into like the human genome through conversation. So I've had a really good success of hiring just psychology students. So it's about being able to showcase your strengths. So I hope that helps. All right, anything else? These are some great questions, you guys. I'm actually very happy right now. Is there anything else that, I mean, it can be as off the wall as you like. I am an open book. So please don't hesitate to ask anything you want. Resumes, career fair, virtual setting. I'm trying to think about anything else. Okay, what are the biggest challenges of the wine business? So I'd have to say, challenges just in the wine business in general. Like, we're a wine only company, so we don't make or supply or distribute anything else besides wine. So we are in a specific niche category, right? We don't sell beer, we don't sell liquor, we don't sell wine, or we don't sell cigarettes, we don't sell water, we just sell wine. So I think that's been the biggest challenge in general for us, is because we're just a niche market. It's kind of like, well, Range Rovers and Land Rovers, like certain people like those cars, right? Or that brand, or that, family of vehicles. So I think it's just being able to educate people about wine and have them fall in love with the story and the passion behind it, because every winery has its own story. So I think that's probably been the biggest challenge. Right now we don't really have too many challenges in selling it because everyone is at home drinking. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Anyone else? Beautiful.
Hey, Jenna, I have a question for you. So there's a career fair, I think, at the end of the month that I signed up for, and there's a group session with the employer and then individual. Would you say anything to stand out in the group?
I definitely have a couple questions. Have your video on, like nod your head, because there's probably going to be 20 plus students on there, I would assume. So definitely like eye contact, engage, nod your head, ask questions, put questions in the comment box. That's how I would do it. And then in the comment box, you can state, looking forward to my one-on-one with you. Right. So they're like, oh, okay. Well, Marissa's like, she totally stood out. She asked me questions. She said she was going to follow up in the one-on-one. Cool. I look forward to getting to know her better. That's your chance to like seal the deal. If they provide an email address, like I just did in the comment box, to follow up or have questions after that group session, you send that little follow-up email, attach your resume and say, I'm looking forward to my one-on-one with you at the career fair. I'm booked for this time. I mean, that's just going like that second layer rather than just like setting it up and showing up.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
thanks.
That's a great question, actually. Wow. Yeah. And Sandy, did you raise your hand?
I did. So my question is backing up from Marissa's question. So how would you distinguish yourself in a group interview without talking over the other candidates or like interrupting others?
Great question. A group interview. That's interesting. You kind of have me stumped there. I don't know if I've ever been in one or seen one. I would say like in virtual setting, I mean, just from like me thinking off the top of my head, the eye contact, the questions in the comment box, and making sure that like you do answer every question that is asked and that they don't pass you up on one. And making sure that your answer is not the same as someone else's. You can say, you know what, I echo what Marissa is saying, and I completely agree with that. And I truly believe that. However, I also would like to say that, so I would say that's probably a really challenging interview, because you don't want to speak over others and you don't want to be rude, but you also need to get your questions asked, because not only is this an interview to see if you're a good fit for their company culture and like their goals, but it's also an interview for you to see if they're a good fit for you. It has to be a two-way street. So making it well known that you also are interviewing them, very important. Because when I go into an interview and it's a one-way street and I'm just interviewing and I'm like, no, like it's just not going to work. I want you to interview me almost more than I'm interviewing you. So I'll do like get to know each other in the very beginning of my interview. We should do like Denise, I know you're on here, but we should probably do like a mock interview series where like I can, interview how I would, a student. So just make a note of that. But that would be really, that would be great to do like a quick little mock interview series. And then I can provide feedback. But yeah, it's, that would be challenging, Sandy. So if you're stuck in that situation, just make sure that you're speaking up and asking questions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome. Anything else? I think we're coming to a close. You guys have given me so much of your time. I love it. Yeah. What?
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Could you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can.
I had an interview yesterday, but my question is, if everything is going well, but behind the recruiter's mind when you can't answer a question?
Okay, I only heard half of that question because you did cut out. So I had an interview yesterday and blank, 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 blank. Can you just repeat it or type it in the chat box? Because I think it's a great question.
Okay, hold on.
I have a feeling. And while you type it, I'm going to answer this one.
Okay.
What are some fits you look for in a potential candidate for my company culture? Great question. So some fits that I look for is someone who I hire for sales. I have partners. I'm a liaison for other parts of our organization to help connect you. But when it comes to hiring for sales, I want someone who is outgoing, who is passionate, who isn't afraid to just talk to a random person, that can kind of spark conversation with anyone. A chameleon, someone who's competitive. I would say someone who has just a nice presence about them, right? That's just like, you kind of like, if I was to see you walking down the street and you just feel like you're like wanting to tell a story, like I want to hire you, like there's something about you I just want to know more about. That's who I want to hire because I feel like you've just got something to offer. I would say that, yes, I review resumes and I read them, but honestly, more of it has to say about how I engage and connect with the candidate. When it's dry and basic, it's not typically going to work because you're going to be talking with buyers all day long. So if you can't have a nice conversation with me, you're not going to have a nice conversation with the probably 60 people you're going to talk to while you're out in the market every day. So I hope that answers that question. Amelia, you came up with great questions today. What goes behind a recruiter's mind when the applicant is stumped on a question and can't answer when everything was going well? Well, I'd love to know what the question was. So if you remember what that was, which you probably do, put in the chat box. I'd love to help you with that. So I would say, like, if you don't think you're going to answer a question appropriately, or you don't know exactly how to convey the right message, or you were nervous or whatever, and you just don't know how to answer it, follow-up email, answer that question, right? So I don't know what the question is because you haven't given it to me yet. But if it stumped you that much and you now have a great answer for it, you have their contact info, say, you know what, blah, 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 blah. Name a time you went above and beyond. Oh, you could come up with anything for that one. Oh my gosh. It could be an in-class project. It could be for your family. It could be at a job. You could like kind of extend the truth a little bit, like anything. So I think that in your follow-up email, so I'm going to give you a piece of advice. Take that and go to that recruiter, whoever you've been speaking to, send them an email, say it was such a pleasure talking with you yesterday. I know that we were having such a great conversation, and I felt this, awkward silence when I wasn't able to answer the question about going above and beyond X, Y, and Z. And I wanted to give it some thought. I wanted to follow up with you because I had quite a few things going through my head. I didn't want to come across disorganized. So, and then share what you want to say. So I hope that helps. But yeah, in your follow-up email. Hi guys, before we end the meeting, I would love to connect with you through LinkedIn. Beautiful. Sounds good. I think you have my name, but I'm on LinkedIn as well. So why don't you just follow me and then I'll follow you back. And I'm more than happy to help any of you guys out. I did provide my work email address. So if you did have any follow-up questions or you want me to glance at your resume or need any, tips and tricks for anything, don't hesitate to reach out. I am a resource for, FIU and for Denise. So if you can't get in touch with me, definitely get in touch with Denise and she could get you my way. But I hope that this was beneficial. You spent an hour of your beautiful day with me. And I appreciate the ones who did turn their camera on and being present today. So if you have any other questions, just don't hesitate to follow up. And I'll do something fun with FIU probably in the next month or two before the end of the semester. So stay tuned. Have a good day, you guys.
Thank you, Jenna.
Okay, you got it.
Have a great day. Bye.
Okay, bye.